Doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Amazing to have you here, brother. Since we connected, your story, and if you allow me to put it that way, so you're like the networking guy. You're always in events, either attending events or hosting events. So it's amazing, man. Your story and everything. Thanks for accepting this invite to be a guest on our live stream.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for the invite. It's great to be here and having a chat about all things events.
Yes, amazing. And today is a special edition, and for that reason, my co-founder, wasn't able to join us because it's Thanksgiving in the US, and I'm in Brazil. So I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna roll it up, and glad, it kind of fit because you're in the UK as well. So you guys don't really have Thanksgiving. So here we are, that's amazing, man. How's everything for the holiday seasons?
As I was just saying, we were exhibiting at a show last week, which is the first time that we've done that in a while. In fact,
Mhm.
since I think Web Summit last year. So that was pretty busy, and now we've sort of created a load of kind of follow up and things to do from the show, which, if you've read any of my stuff, the follow ups are the important bit. So we're working hard on that, but we've just got a couple of weeks, and then myself and my co-founder are going to have a week off and do some skiing, and just have a bit of downtime, and a bit of brainstorming, and just kind of get out of London and
That's
yeah,
amazing.
take a bit of a break.
Where are you guys going?
We are going to Austria, which I've only skied in once before, but it was great.
Mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to going back.
Awesome. That's amazing. And to start off our conversation, guys, you're gonna love, Chris' stories. He is amazing. And I'm gonna start from the beginning, because from what I know, you have a certificate as a dive master, right?
Do yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about this. Why and what is the experience like? Like what can you learn by being a dive master, for example?
Yeah, well, I mean that's a long story, but so I started scuba diving after university, and one of my very good friends from uni kind of lived kind of close to me, and we were like, now we finished uni, and we have this time, and we've gone into the professional world. We thought it would be good to do some sort of hobby. We didn't have the university clubs and things like that to sort of
Mhm.
keep ourselves busy. So it was a bit random, really. We were like, there was a local scuba club, which is weird because we were in Reading at the time, which is like sort of about 40 miles west of London, completely landlocked, like nowhere near the coast or any water. But they had a scuba club, so we joined, and kind of went through the training with them, and it started off doing pool work, and then because they were inland, the way that they would do the diving is they would organize like a weekend trip. So we'd go away for a couple of days down to the south coast, or we do sort of training dives. We go to a quarry, of which there's a few around the sort of South UK, kind of, which are specific for diving. So yeah, we kind of did it for a couple of years, and went on some great trips with the club, kind of around the UK and abroad as well. And then sort of fast forward a number of years later, when I'd started the agency, the product agency Conjure.
Mhm.
Been doing that for a few years, and it got really stressful, really busy. We had a really difficult client that I was dealing with for like 2 years, and I was like, I need to have a bit of a break, and so decided to take a bit of a sabbatical and do sort of 3 months off. And I was like, well, I'm not the kind of person that's very good at just sort of sitting on the beach and doing nothing. So I was like, if I'm away for 3 months, what should I do? And I
I
was like,
gotta do
oh, well,
something, right?
Yeah, indeed. So I was like, I love diving, and I
Uh,
wanted to go to Thailand. So I went to Thailand, and organized, effectively like interning at this dive school. And as part of that, did my dive master training, and was sort of, doing 3 or 4 dives a day for, 3 months. And it was amazing, like such a cool experience. And it was, for a lot of people, that's work, right? But for me, it was just fun, learning and getting the qualification, and just meeting so many people, because most of the courses they did were sort of 2 or 3 days.
mhm.
So it was just like continuously new people coming in all the time, and it was brilliant. One of the best experiences that I've done.
That's amazing. And best place you ever did scuba diving?
I think, I mean, Thailand is amazing, but the Red Sea is pretty cool.
Why?
Probably, I think one of the best places that I've been. I was lucky enough to go to Australia last year, so I did some diving on the Barrier Reef there, and that was pretty amazing too. So yeah, there's some great places. One of the places we went with the dive club in Reading was the Hebrides around Scotland, which was
Mhm.
very cold, but just stunning. I mean, crystal clear water, like you wouldn't believe it, but some of the clearest water I've been in. I think it's just too cold for stuff to live in, but like it was very beautiful.
That's amazing. And obviously, I know that for caves, for example, you need to have a specific
Mm,
training, right? Have
mm.
you ever did scuba diving in a cave?
I've done a couple of cave dives,
Oh my god.
and it was quite terrifying.
I can
To the
imagine,
point,
like, oh my god, like what happened, Like
yeah,
if
it's
something goes
I
south, like you're kind of like on your own, right?
yeah, I didn't get the bug to do more cave diving. Like, it was a good experience, but I wasn't like, I must get back and do this again.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Awesome. And obviously, and from my point of view, I see that a lot of people, they always like had that bug, say like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. And there's other people that they go to the corporate and sometimes they're just tired of it and say like, you know what, I'm going to try something different, where you at regarding that, and how uh, how did you become entrepreneur, if I might say that way, or as you remember, you always had that mindset like, hey, I'm going to be entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been very independent. I think since I was younger, and certainly at like college and definitely at university, I always sort of imagined that I would work for myself, or I would, start some sort of business. Um, and when I started my first business, it wasn't really planned. Like, it wasn't. I hadn't been thinking about it for a year or 2 years and go, right, okay, on this date or this, year, I'm going to start it. It was just circumstance, that
Mhm.
worked out, really well. And that's what I guess really started my entrepreneurship journey. But I think, prior to that, again, always been very self-starting. If I look back to the first job that I ever had, um, it was a local sort of computer repair shop, and I didn't know anything about, repairing computers or stuff.
Mhm.
I was 15 or 16 at the time, and and there was only one of them. I grew up in a small town. There wasn't very much. I was lucky. There was that one, sort of repair center, and I remember going down and speaking to the guy that owned it and said, "Oh, can I work for you?" And I was at home. I was tinkering around with websites and things like that. There's, the beginning of the web or whatever. And he said, "No, I don't need any help. And I don't need anyone that doesn't know how to do anything." But he said, I do need the building painted. So I was like, well, I need a job, and it means
I
that
do it.
I get to be around these people,
Uh-huh.
and I did that, and it
Awesome.
it took me 8 weeks or whatever to paint this building inside and outside, and then by the end of it, he was like, well, you're a great worker. I want to have you around. And, he slowly introduced me to stuff, and I was, working with some of the other guys there that were doing repairs, and started to learn some of that stuff. And that's kind of always been how I wanted to do stuff, just get stuck in, and just be self-starting, I guess. So I think that's where it comes from.
Awesome. That's amazing. And obviously right now it's very sexy and everyone wants to like learn how to code and develop. And obviously you have a major in computer science. Like why? Like why
Mm,
did you choose that path? And because you are the OG, because you're a computer science before it went
mm.
viral. Let's put it that way. So how was the experience for you?
Yeah, I was always, I was fascinated by, computers. I petitioned my dad for months, if not years, to buy a computer. We had a 386 at home, and that was my first, computer that I had access to. And,
Mhm,
by the time, the school got computers that we could use, I'd already been using one at home a little bit. I kind of knew how to use it. And,
mhm.
we kind of notionally had like IT kind of classes, but, it wasn't like the software that we were using today. It was, more sort of terminal kind of computing and stuff like that. And, um, the teachers there didn't really know. I was kind of one step ahead of them because I've been playing and tinkering. And so I was always fascinated by computers. I loved using them. I spent way too much time on them. And I think I got super interested in the web. And that was my first coding, writing HTML or writing websites and stuff like that. And there were authoring tools around, like sort of Dreamweaver and things like that, the more kind of click and drag and drop sort of editors. But they were really expensive, so if you wanted to do it, you were kind of doing it all by hand. And we certainly didn't have the AI tools. The autocomplete was, pretty much non-existent. You were copying and stuff out of books, because the resources online weren't as available, certainly weren't as plentiful. So yeah, I mean, computer science, computers to me were always fascinating. I loved them since I was a kid. And that's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to do something with computers. And yeah, by the time I got around to going to university, computer science was a strong choice for me. So that's kind of how I ended up doing that.
That's amazing. And a great thing to address as well is how versatile you are, because a lot of people, whenever we see like developers or tech people, sometimes they obviously, they lack the other skills, like they don't really know how to sell their products, or, they don't know how to talk to investors. But, on your journey, what is amazing is you are the whole package, right? So whenever we see your journey, you had like the Conjure, as you mentioned, you had workspaces. So tell us a little bit about this, from Conjure to Future Spaces, and how and what did you do to develop these other skills, and
Mm. Well, I think like future spaces. So myself and one of my business partners from Conjure, we kind of renovate and manage some workspaces which we rent out to companies. And we have a handful of those which we've done for a few years now. But again, it wasn't something that we kind of specifically set out to do. It was a bit of a side. It was a bit of a side effect of some extra space that we had at the agency, because we were growing and shrinking over the years. And kind of we wanted to maintain the same space that we had as a business. So sometimes we had to rent some out, sometimes we needed more space. And so to deal with that fluctuation, we were like, well, can we bring other businesses in to use that space? And then eventually we thought, well, we should kind of professionalize this into its own sort of thing. It's not really like a key part of business for the agency. So we kind of need to separate it out and just kind of make it a bit more sensible. And that's where that came from. But I think, entrepreneurship, and I think all skills these days, especially for people are becoming more generalist, right? There's so many tools out there that can allow somebody who doesn't know much about something to get started in that field. Let's say social media marketing or whatever. There'll be a tool out there they can sign up, and it will do a bunch of the stuff for them without them having to know too much. So people are becoming more generalists. It's becoming easier for people to start businesses and run small businesses. And so I think as part of that, you've kind of got to have that mindset of seeing the opportunities, and kind of jumping on them, because it's great having an idea about what you want to do, but often timing is the thing that kills businesses usually. You're either too late to the market, too early to the market. Like, getting that sweet spot is really hard, and it's often guesswork, right? Being there at the right time is impossible sometimes to predict. So just taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented, I think, is a key skill in being a generalist, and entrepreneurship.
Amazing. And you talked about timing, for example. Tell the audience, like, how do you know you are either too early or too late for the party?
Well, the market will tell you usually. I started another startup about 3 years ago, which unfortunately we were a little bit early. I think, with hindsight now, which meant that it was very difficult for us to kind of raise money and things like that, because the market wasn't quite mature enough for the type of products that we were trying to develop. So yeah, unfortunately, we found out, couple of years down the line, that the timing was wrong. Because you can't really control the timing, it's very difficult. It's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of understanding, the market and the industry to sort of see whether the opportunity is there. But yeah, there's a little bit of luck to it, I think.
Amazing. And obviously, right now, you're one of your main focus right now, as far as I know, is profile card.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about it. How did you came up with the idea? What is it about? What are your plans for the future? And where do you see the business in 5 years or so?
Well, I think, like all great ideas that come out of the UK, it started in the pub, and
Awesome.
I was there with Johnny, who's now my co-founder, and we were talking about it was around sort of COVID times as well. So people were kind of funny about touching things and swapping things, and we were talking about sustainability and stuff like that. And we just had this idea. It's like, business cards are so wasteful, and they're not really integrated into the kind of digital tools and things that everyone uses nowadays. So we were like, this seems like something that is ripe for some form of innovation. So we did some research, and there were a couple of providers out there that were doing sort of similar things, but this was 5 years ago now, so it was pretty early for the digital business card kind of market. And yeah, between the two of us, we kind of had the skills to create and launch Profile Card, or V1 of Profile Card, which took us a few months, and I guess the rest is history, really. But yeah, we wanted to. The key to the business is sustainability, really. We wanted to replace single-use business cards with something that is more sustainable.
Awesome. And where you see, everyone's talking about, oh, the next big revolution, like the industrial revolution, it's everything running around AI, 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 AI. And every startup out there, they trying to put AI everywhere. And I see, obviously, you have a solid business. You guys are growing. You guys have a huge number of clients already, from small business to big enterprises. And with your whole experience, where the future holds for Profile Car, where you see
Mm.
the business in 5 years, what do you have on your roadmap that you could share with the audience as well? Give us some spoilers.
Yeah, some spoilers. Yeah, so it was really funny at Web Summit last year, because I think we were right at the peak of the AI hype, right? And
Mhm.
every business that you spoke to there, every startup was something or other AI for whatever, and we had no AI in our product, and that in a way kind of almost made us stand out. We were like, we don't do anything with AI, and people were like, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that?
Mhm.
So I mean, incidentally, we do now have some bits of AI in the product, but um, yeah, I think when we look at networking and when we look at events, it is massively human centric. Like that is the reason that those events exist, is to bring people together, either physically or virtually. That doesn't matter too much, but it is people, and it's connections, and it's relationships. And so if I dream about what the future of Profile Card, it is about helping people to form relationships, and at the moment we're focused on commercial relationships and things like that. But how do you find these people? How do you bring them together? How do you swap details? How do you stay connected? We don't want to replace social medias or CRM systems and things like that, but what we want to do is try and facilitate them. And so I think that the next year or next 2 years for us, I think keep an eye on what we're doing around events. We want to make event discovery better, and an event facilitation easier. And so those are the key kind of things for us that we're looking at. But I think us having the sustainability angle, and that being one of our key missions, is great. But now we're a few years down the line, we're really starting to see where that opportunity for helping people to connect and bringing people together comes from.
Awesome. And from your experience as well, like we said, you're very versatile. You're, as your LinkedIn profile tell us, you're a startup builder, you're a technologist, you're angel investors, and from different sectors. What else could we learn from your experience? Like, I mean, share your playbook, if you will. Like, what would you tell someone at, like, let's say 18 years old, they're starting their first business or whatever? What kind of advice would you give that kid?
Yeah, I mean, playbooks are hard, because I think starting this business now is very different to the business I started 5 years ago, and then 5 years before that. It changes so fast. I think in terms of advice for someone going into business and entrepreneurship and things like that, I think learn from some other people first, with their money. Work for some startups, see how it all works and kind of comes together, get a bit of experience that way. But if there's an opportunity in front of you, then grab it. Again, the timing thing is like, you just got to do these things when the opportunity presents itself. But yeah, I would say, uh, try and get a bit of experience, and in different areas as well. So running a business, unless you kind of magically fall upon co-founders that well, one is great at sales and one is great at marketing and one is great at technology and this, that, and the other, you're probably not going to have all of those skills like at first. So being able to work with some businesses and see how the marketing team works and see how sales team works, and see how product team works. All these things will really help you when you come to do it on your own, because there are going to be roles and there are going to be parts of that business which you're either not going to be able to do, or you're not going to be able to afford to pay for someone to do. So you're going to have to rely on yourself to do it.
Amazing. And obviously, I know, I can only imagine as well how many pitches and people, reach out to share ideas, to share business pitch decks and whatever, and from my perspective, I see a lot of people like, all right, they share this idea, and like 3 months go by, 6 months go by, and crickets, and a year go by, and nothing changed, and obviously I see a lot of that with people, and projects as well, and you talked about that experience, like, hey, work, gather some, some skin, and then kind of go into the market and do your. When do you believe is the right moment to kind of, all right, let me start my own project, let me, start my own business, because I see a lot of people, they kind of, they freeze, in that
Mm,
moment. What would you tell that kid as well?
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one too, because there's two schools of thought on this. One is, um, try and create a side gig. Do something
Mm,
alongside your full-time work. So you're being funded. You've got a salary coming in. You've got the security blanket, effectively, of being able to do something in your spare time. But the flip side of that, and the argument is, well, is anyone going to take you seriously if you're kind of not doing it full time? You're very unlikely to raise any funding. If you're not 100% dedicated to this thing, and you're being distracted by a full-time job somewhere of something that you probably don't have the same amount of passion for. So there's very much two schools of thoughts out, because of course it's very difficult, right? It's very difficult to make the leap from being in a employed position to go, right, I'm gonna jump and into my own thing, and I'm not going to get paid for who knows how long. That's really scary, but it is a jump that you have to take at some point, in order to, yeah, as you say, move things forward and start to change things. So I think these days it's so much easier to test and validate ideas than it's ever been before. I don't necessarily agree 100%, but you get a lot of people now talking about, you can create products, you can sell them before you even have a product, right? Have a website, create a waiting list, see if someone's gonna buy it, or at least they're gonna sign up for a waiting list to buy it, and then that gives you an idea about the demand. Like, there's absolutely a lot of that you can do, and you can do a lot of testing and tweaking of your ideas before you even create something in it, and you have to go full time into it. So it is easier to do, have a side gig, I guess. Now, but yeah, at some point you got to make the jump. If you're passionate about it, you believe in it, and you want other people to believe in your idea, either because you want them to buy from you, or you want them to give you some funding or something. They've got to believe in you, and they've got to believe in the idea.
That's amazing. And on that topic as well, whenever people are starting their own business or pivoting or a new project or whatever, a lot of them might hear suggestions like, you're in the wrong place, you need to, and back in the days with Silicon Valley, like, hey, you
Mm,
need to be in Silicon Valley, and after a while change to like Texas. A lot of tech companies starting going to Texas, and obviously around Europe as well. Portugal a few years back, started all these tech programs with Web Summit as well, for example. And right now, a lot of people are talking about UAE, like, hey, you need to be in Dubai and whatever. Like, what, from your perspective, what are the good opportunities there are in the UK, for
mm.
example, for entrepreneurs?
I think there are always, I think you can have a business, you can start a business anywhere and be successful. Fundamentally, I think you can increase your chances of success in some areas, and because especially when there's investment from governments into certain countries or certain cities, especially around certain technologies, you just give yourself a better chance if you're surrounding yourself with, funding opportunities, other people that want to be there in the same industry, either to start businesses, to collaborate with, to employ as staff. So yeah, it sort of comes down to stacking the odds in your favor, I guess. But I mean, specifically around the UK, I mean, I'm biased. I live in London, which is an amazing place. You know, I wanted to live here for many years. I only moved here about 8 or 9 years ago. But you know, to build a business, London is incredible, because just the density of people, the amount of people that are willing to sort of collaborate, you know, customers, suppliers, potential, you know, staff, that kind of stuff. So it is a great place to have a business. But you know, there are other cities around the UK that do have kind of innovation or entrepreneur kind of hubs for certain types of industries. You know, and some of those, or quite a few of those, are based around some of the university towns, you know, especially like Cambridge and Oxford, for example, that have got a huge amount of spin out companies from universities. You know, that then attracts you know, venture capitalists and funds and things to that area because of the density of those startups that are in that area. So you know, UK for manufacturing, you know, traditionally great. We've just had a budget here, so I haven't looked into exactly what the spending on certain industries has been there, but you know, it has been said. I don't know what the reality is, but you know, supporting entrepreneurs and innovation in the UK is certainly something that I think the government thinks is important, because that is one of the key drivers of growth as an economy. So yeah, there's lots of great options. I mean, London as a finance center, again, super strong. You know, we had our version, I guess, of Silicon Valley, the Silicon Roundabout, if you ever heard of that. We had in an area of London. So you know, we've got a lot going on. I think the UK, despite a little bit of doom and gloom, is still a great place to start a business.
That's amazing. And regarding that, I believe one of the biggest questions, and obviously the first time entrepreneurs, they don't really understand how important that is. But from my perspective, and I would love to hear yours, is you have two different kind of playbooks for your business regarding if you are going to seek, and you know how much funding you're going to need, you know, like, hey, are you going to seek VCs funding, angel investors funding, or you're going to bootstrap your business, you know, the whole way up? I mean, you know, so what's your view on this? Because a lot of people just say like, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna go, like, you know, let's say Craigslist kind of business, you know, and obviously you have Facebook kind of business that since day one, like VCs, you know, it's very VC sexy, let's put it that way. You know, all the VCs, the rounds are obviously always overcommitted, and you know, like, so what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, it's been really fun watching the trend around this. I think you're absolutely right. For a long time, you know, raising money, VC investment, you know, getting £1 million, £10 million check into your business, it is sexy, right? It allows you to do a lot of stuff. It's kind of fun and dynamic. But I think that the trend over the last couple of years has definitely been, you know, bootstrapping maybe fell out a little bit of favor, or people thought that maybe the VC, you know, model was easier. And I think that the challenge with the VC model is it's very, very hard to anticipate, you know, what the end game looks like when you start working with external capital. From VCs or any other sort of funding, and you know, there were some pretty high profile companies and founders that, you know, grew enormous companies, you know, that were very profitable and were making a lot of money. And you know, when they finally came to exit, you know, they were making, you know, pennies on the dollar, cents on the dollar, and it was because of, you know, founders maybe don't have the same level of knowledge about how, you know, the VC world works, and, you know, maybe they signed some bad agreements, and maybe, I don't want to say, I don't want to say conned, but, you know, they were maybe didn't have the best advice, or, you know, they made a few bad choices, not because they did it on purpose, but just because they didn't know any better, and ended up getting a bit screwed, basically. So, you know, I think that those sort of stories, again, of what's fueled a little bit, you know, you can do stuff bootstrapping. Is it harder? It's harder in a different way, because if you go down the VC route, as a founder, you will spend most of your time raising money. You won't spend most of your time building a business. So again, it's hard for a different reason, because then you need other people around you to be doing the sales and the growth and all the things that you need to do to make the business successful. So you're absolutely right. It's two very different ways of looking at things. I've done both, and bootstrapping is very rewarding, right? Because everything is yours. You know, the growth of that is yours. Profile was bootstrapped. If I look back to when we started 5 years ago, you know, we kind of made the decision that unless there was an absolute fundamental reason as to why, you know, we thought raising some money would be the only option for us as a business, we just wouldn't do it. And we haven't done it to this point. And you know, we've grown a reasonably large, successful, profitable business, and with very little investment up front, and that from us, which we've paid back to ourselves. So, you know, we're in profit now, and that's really rewarding. Like that's great. Like, I would do this way of doing it again for sure. But, you know, have we grown as fast because, you know, we didn't have a check for £1 million to go and spend on marketing and advertising and all these things that could help us grow faster? You know, probably not. We could have probably grown quicker with some external investment. So it's a really tough choice, I think, for founders to decide which of those roads to go down.
Yeah, and I love what you said, because sometimes I look at platforms such as LinkedIn and I see a lot of, founders, flexing about, like if they raise, how much they're raising, and this and that. And like you said, sometimes you see those business 6 months later, a year later, and a lot of them failed, because they were like actually so busy just trying to raise and obviously flex on social media, and and had some PRs and stuff like that. And obviously there's the other side as well, that kid in his garage doing his thing, bootstrapping, growing very slowly but growing, and both of them are right, because a lot of people build some amazing, very successful businesses, with VCs. Those guys are ninjas, because like you said, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of commitment, and obviously you got to know the right people, so that's amazing as well. And both those entrepreneurs, that's why I stated, it's just two different playbooks. Yeah, and then that's awesome. Awesome, guys. So, all right, before we wrap it up, and jump onto the Kornerz app to keep the conversation going, hope you can join us on there, Chris. Your final thoughts. What's in your mind? Everything is everywhere. The United States is making people crazy about tariffs, about wars, and whatever. And around the world, market wise, inflation is skyrocketing, AI, people are saying it's a bubble, people are not saying it's a bubble. So what's in your mind on your final thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I have really enjoyed watching the evolution of AI over the last couple of years, and funny enough, so my degree was in two subjects, so computer science and cybernetics, and a huge part of cybernetics was AI, and that kind of stuff. But the AI that I studied 20 years ago is very different to the AI that's available now. So it's the stuff that's coming out with AI now. It does look like magic, You know, you look at the outcome of these things, and it's amazing what they can create. I was reading an article yesterday about the new Nano Banana Pro, or whatever the new one is, and the quality of stuff that comes out of it is incredible. But you know, I do think it's a bubble, like any technology bubble. You know, if you look at, you know, blockchain or cryptocurrency a few years ago, you know, again, huge bubble. It will burst or will decline in terms of investment and things like that, because again, I was talking about this with another founder friend of mine the other day. It's so easy to create stuff now. You know, the question of, should I build something? It doesn't exist, because you can build anything that you want. But the question of, should I build it? You know, is there a reason for something to exist? Is now so much more important than it ever was before, because, you know, I think that's what people are calling like the AI slop and stuff like that. So easy to create something. You can create anything you want, but, you know, but should you be doing it? So I think we're going to see a lot around that. You know, we're going to see services, you know, come and go because they look like they're doing really cool things, but actually, are they adding any value to what people need it for? So yeah, I think that's what I'm pretty interested in continuing to watch over the next year or two.
That's amazing. Awesome. So, Chris, brother, thanks for this amazing conversations. To the audience out there, please make sure to find Chris on his social media. So I'm gonna put, I'm gonna hide this label for a second. So Chris Tingley, you can find him on LinkedIn. Make sure to check out profilecard.com as well. Here it's their website. Make sure to wait. All right, so trying to can you hear me? Am I still
Yeah.
here? Oh, so just something. I received a message that my connection was unstable. Make sure to order your business card, profile card. And right now we're gonna jump for a few minutes on the Kornerz social network app, to keep the conversation going. It's a little bit different from this live stream because over there we're gonna join a Nook. It's basically a video call chat room. It's limited to 9 people. So because